Hello everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about GDP in America and GDP growth in America. I'm Joey Mason and let's get into it. First off, what is GDP? GDP is an equation that has a bunch of different factors that weigh into it and you come out with a number. Those factors that weigh into the GDP or the gross domestic product are consumer spending, government investing, business investing, and net exports. So those five weigh into this equation to come out with the GDP's final number. So now that we know a little bit about what GDP is and what goes into GDP, we're going to look at the last 30 years of GDP percentage growth in America and see if we can see any trends in this chart. From what I've seen is that the chart has no real correlation to it. It kind of goes up and down, dips, and then comes back up, which all has to do with those five factors that weigh into the equation. But in 2008 and 2009, we can see from the chart that the GDP actually dips below zero, and it was a negative GDP. And we actually had a recession in those years. I'm sure most of you already know about this. So now that we know what the past 30 years look like, we're going to take a deeper look at growth periods in America versus recessions in America and what the GDP looks like in both those periods. So growth periods in America, we're looking for a higher GDP. We're looking for around 3% GDP, and that has to do with a bunch of different factors. We're looking for a higher stock market price, higher indexes, a bunch of different things. But as we can see from this chart, that didn't really happen during the housing crisis in 08-09. We can see that GDP actually dropped below zero, and we had a recession. And a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth or lower GDP growth than the quarters before. So we can see that in 2008 it was only about a negative 0.1% GDP. In 2009 though it was a negative 2.5% GDP, and that was at the heart of the recession about 10 years ago. So GDPs can go up and down, but once the housing market crashed and a bunch of people lost a lot of money and a lot of things, the GDP went way down. Now that we've seen the past 30 years of GDP, we've looked at the recession in 08 and 09. We're going to look at a couple years ahead. We're going to go all the way to 2022 and predictions of future GDP. So from the numbers I found, I compiled this chart, and in 2019 through 2020 and 2022, the numbers are actually falling. So there has been talk about a recession coming in 2019. We haven't seen it yet, but it still could be looming according to a couple economists and a couple pundits on business TV channels and a bunch of different things. So the GDP growth is expected to be 2.9 in 2019, 1.9 in 2020, 1.8 in 2021, and 1.48 in 2022. So as you can see, the GDP is falling. Those numbers could change if any of those factors in the equation change, but that is about what the GDP is about. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. It's good to know what GDP is because it can affect the economy and it can affect stock markets and it can affect your daily lives if we do start having negative GDPs. Thank you very much.